Hello, I'm Cindy Ehrenberg-Seltzer, President and CEO of the Children's Services Council of Broward County. Welcome to another episode of Future First, Focus on Broward's Children. This episode is one of a series that we will feature in celebration of our 20th anniversary and through a year-long Youth Summit series. The fundamental premise of the work of the CSC and the Broward Children's Strategic Plan is that we, as a community, come together to improve the lives of children and families and help build a world where today's children can thrive and become responsible, productive adults. As professionals in the field, we work every day to help build systems that can do better by our children. But in truth, when advocating for legislative action, challenges to the status quo, the creation of more effective support systems, and a greater understanding of the issues that affect them, little is as effective as youth advocating for themselves, taking center stage and bringing their message directly to policy and other decision makers. Any elected representative will tell you that youth advocacy is a very powerful tool for positive collective change. That's why I'm so happy that we are producing the show today on the youth voice and youth engaging directly in advocating for issues they care about. Today, I'm joined by Annastacia Robinson, a Broward County organizer and parent of a youth activist, Easton Harrison, a community activist, Chelsea Lucien, a youth advocate currently studying at Florida International University, and Darriel Gomez, a youth advocate and student at South Broward High School. Welcome to all of you. I am so excited about this show. I love hearing directly from the youth. Easton, I want to start with you because I've known you for a long time and I've seen you grow in this role as an advocate. Can you talk a little bit about your journey and what brought you to this idea of being an activist?
Yeah, sure. So Cindy, first of all, thank you for having me and having all of us on here. My journey started off not intentionally trying to be an activist or an organizer. I just really had an urge to be involved and to help out wherever I could help out at. So it started with a community cleanup. I remember my first community cleanup that I was at. I remember the feeling of actually, helping the community just on a small scale like that. And then it just snowballed from there. Then I became a part of a few mentorship initiatives. Then I started, being more involved with local nonprofits, such as the Children's Services Council, who works with a lot of great partners and local organizations in the community. And it's just been a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge. And, one thing about community work is that once you start it, you just get hooked, and I don't know how it all happened, but here I am today in the likeness of you and other great individuals. And I'm super happy about that.
It's interesting, as the mom of a 15-year-old who has trouble sometimes articulating her thoughts, she tends to be really shy. I am so impressed that all of you are finding your voice at such a young age, especially you, Darriel. You're still in high school. So have you always been outspoken? What got you to this place?
So definitely, I would say as a younger child, I was also pretty shy. And I think everybody struggles with finding their voice, especially in this day and age. But something that really helped me figure out what it is that I want to do in the future and where my passions lie is when my friends invited me to join the ACLU of Florida's Immigrants Justice Campaign, which I joined last year, my junior year of high school. So it wasn't that early for me. But working alongside other teenagers my age who also were working towards establishing a better life for immigrants here in my hometown of the city of Hollywood, but also Broward County as a whole, and then the state of Florida as a whole. Working with all of those like-minded students really helped me realize that my thoughts are not unique, they're not individual, and there are other people who share them and who are willing to work alongside me to reach them. And knowing that I have that community to stand beside me in the work that I do, whether that's, fighting for immigrant-friendly laws here in Broward County or in the city of Hollywood, or even if it's, having a discussion in my classroom about recent laws that are being passed or things that I wish were different. Just hearing the voices of students who agree with me and who are willing to put in the work alongside me is really reassuring and helping me find my own voice as well.
Wonderful. Chelsea, how about you?
So when you said that your daughter was 15 and she still struggles to find her voice, it reminds me that I actually started becoming more of an advocate and activist when I was 15 years old. And I remember it so clearly because for the majority of my life, I'm kind of a like shy, soft-spoken child, introverted. People could describe me as a follower instead of a leader for most of my life. So whenever I saw like crises, injustices, stuff like that, I was always like worried by them, wanting something to change, but I could never find my voice in advocating for change. And I remember so clearly, like after the tragedy that happened in Parkland, when everyone was staging their walkouts, something like lit up inside of me. Maybe it's because I took it so personally, but I wanted to go to the protest. I wanted to be in the front rows and everything. And I remember how I was trying to convince my friends to go with me and they said, no, it's fine. And I wasn't gonna go. And then when the time came, I ended up being one of the first people to walk out and go to the protest. And I didn't even realize it, but my friends were behind me, following me. And at that moment, I realized that my voice counts. And when I say something and I do something, people are looking and watching, and then that can create a following and that creates more people in. And from that moment in, I was always trying to be in the front row, speaking out, advocating, getting people to sign these petitions, go to protests, lobbying and things like that from that moment.
Annastacia, you yourself are an advocate and you're the mom of an advocate. Do you think it's because that she's involved because she's a chip off the old block, or did you both have your own spark that lit that fire in you?
Thank you, Cindy. And yes, thanks for having me. No, it's definitely the chip off of the old block. As Chelsea was saying, I couldn't find my voice until like 16 years old. And right now she's 15. And only because I'm working in this space with Florida Rising, it gave her the direct opportunity to not have to find a personal experience, but just by looking and observing what was going on around her while I did my work. So I tried to insist on helping her find her voice instead of her being shocked into having to find it, or having to gain that passion from a traumatic experience.
I think often young people feel powerless, like, as I think you all said, what difference can I make? What is my voice? But I think I also heard you say now that once you started to find it, you realized that you actually do have some power. And how are you using that? What is it doing now in your community? Easton, you want to start?
My main, I guess, utilization of my voice is to use the platform to create spaces more inclusive for youth. One of those key things that I've seen is I served on one of the committees for the Broward County Public School, and it was the Diversity and Equity Committee. And one of the things we did was, when I was chair of the committee, I wanted to make sure that not only we had a student representation there, but that the youth also were able to vote and speak on matters that we were talking and voting about. We were the only committee to do this. They, of course, didn't count towards quorum because sometimes, youth have to study for school and it would be unfair that they have to be at a meeting to count towards that. But it was transformational, and we have to do more of that. If we are, and Cindy, we talk about this a lot at CSC, if we are providing services to the youth, how can we include them at the table to give that feedback loop as to what's working, what's not working, and what could be better? I think that's super important. I think any type of services involving youth should have some type of element of that, to where you have youth at the table as also one of the decision makers, as also a voice at the table. And I've made it a commitment of myself that every board I sit on, as long as it's dealing with youth, I try to get the youth involved to actually have a seat at the table.
And for those that want the youth to have a seat at the table, as you mentioned, CSC is very committed to that. What are your best suggestions for how to get the young people to attend? We realize there's a lot of other stressors on you. So Darriel, I saw you ready to jump in there. How do we help the high school student actually give us the feedback and participate?
So something that I've noticed personally in my last 2 years of high school, and particularly this year, my senior year, is that a lot of students are becoming more politically engaged on campus. Um, Personally, I started my own club, Student Social Advocacy Club, last year. And since then, I've seen the rise of a lot of clubs, such as our Black Student Union, a mental health advocacy club, environmentalist clubs. And these are all ways that students, just by staying a little bit after school, are able to engage themselves in these community projects and, find their voices within these areas of social issues that affect them. And so I think that the best way to engage students now that we are back on campuses is by going directly to them, where like just inviting them to stay a little bit after school and presenting it as something that, isn't necessarily a chore. It's not something that needs to dedicate a lot of time to, but it's something where you can genuinely, use your time in a productive way and something that enriches you as a student and as a human being as well, because you're connecting with other people, like I mentioned earlier, people who are like-minded, and you're also seeing the effects of your projects in your community, which I think is a really big thing. It encourages a lot of students to want to continue participating. So whether that's a beach cleanup, whether that's things like my club recently has been doing democracy days, where we go door to door, helping people check their voter registration status and updating it if they need to. Little events like that don't take that much, but you can see the direct effect it has on your community. I think that's the best way to engage students.
Great advice. Thank you. Chelsea, how have you seen students getting involved now that you're in college? Do you see a difference?
I definitely do see a difference. In college, there's a lot more political discussions. Like Darriel was saying, that in the last 2 years, I've seen more people become more politically engaged. They're aware of what's going on. And also with the fact that most of us are now able to vote, a lot of people are getting involved and learning more about everything that's going on. I've seen social media has played an amazing role in getting people informed. A lot of people like to share posts that engages everyone and informs them about what's going on with current events. So using social media is a very powerful tool that can reach out to members of the community. But there's also a lot of organizations on campus that kids can join to get involved. Personally, I'm in charge of my school's UNICEF club, which is more for the children's fund. But even then, we like to put in current events and how we can help along with our fundraising events to inform students about what's going on and how they can be part of the change that we want to happen.
So I may sound like an old lady here, but I really feel the need to offer a word of caution. Social media is a great way to spread information, but you really have to be careful of the source. So even whether it comes to you through TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, I know none of you would get information from Facebook. That's only for old ladies like me. But whatever the social media platform is that it comes from, you still have to look at the source, because anybody can say anything today and it's taken as gospel. Check multiple sources, make sure that what you're looking at is from someone reliable, because you can wind up going down crazy rabbit holes through through information that comes. It's a great tool, but when in the wrong hands, it can be really problematic. But it's important, because when you're being informed and when you're being an advocate, you want to make sure that you're armed with good information. Credibility is really important. So you don't want to be spouting nonsense. A word from our sponsor. Now back to you, Annastacia. So tell me about what you're doing and what fuels your work and what you're working on.
Well, My main objective now is the housing crisis. As we know, it's children are also being affected by the rent increases that we're experiencing here due to the lack of legislation that we have to enforce a ceiling on how much we can increase rent. But what really got me into the work was voter registration, making sure that our youth are familiar with the process of voting, and not just voting because, but having an educated vote. So all of these things are tied into each other, and they do affect each other. So yeah, those are the two main things we're focusing on.
And how have you inspired your daughter? How do you think you got her for other parents who are watching and thinking, yeah, I want to get my child involved?
I met her where she was, right? So initially, as all of us, we were all kids at one point in time. Politics wasn't always like the forefront of our mind as fun, right? Or necessary. So I just met her where she was. I started off in voter registration, like, hey, come on and just experience this with me one time. And she started to ask questions. So it's like just the experience of it all. Like, they might pout a little bit at first, but the experience in itself will make questions. Also, being able to have her travel to participate in lobbying. Now, the kicker is you have to give them a pro. So it's like, oh, you want to miss school? Right? You want to miss school for a cause? Yeah, I want to miss school. And then next thing you know, we're walking around the Capitol, and I'm trying to let her know these are the places where laws are made that affect you in the long haul. So, it just gets them more curious when you try to meet them where they are and, give them a little perk or two every now and again.
So it's funny that you say meet them where they are, because I just had an interesting conversation with my daughter, who, I don't know why she asked this question, maybe because she's heard her father and I talking about it. She said, what is this that's going on with Ukraine and Russia? This was prior to the invasion, but where all of this run-up was happening. And I started to explain geopolitics, and her eyes were glazing over. And then it was like, well, it's like so are you saying it's like a bad breakup? Like that was their boyfriend, and then when they broke up, that, Ukraine's like, see ya, but Russia is like, no, I really, I don't want to let you go. And so it was a much more relatable conversation, and we kind of took that that metaphor about as far as we could go with it. But it really speaks to that meeting where they are to get involved and to care. And when we talk about being in Tallahassee, Easton, you spend a lot of time in Tallahassee. I remember taking you your first time, and now I understand you're like the mayor of Tallahassee when you go up there. So what's that like to talk to legislators? And for those who may be a little worried about what it means to meet with someone who's an elected official, how did you manage those nerves, and what do you do?
Well, elected officials, I learned very quickly that they are really like normal people. Actually, they are normal people. There's absolutely nothing to be intimidated by or afraid of. And I learned that very quickly. How does it feel to meet with your legislators and elected officials? It is an empowering feeling, because you are talking with someone who has direct influence and a direct say to different things that you would like to see a change in. And my experience has always been a great experience. I've met with tons of amazing, great representatives, from Representative Gottlieb, Representative Marie Woodson, so many great people, Senator Lauren Book, so many great people that I've had the chance to meet. And I remember seeing these folks on TV or reading them on articles online, and I'm like, man, when I get in front of these people, what am I gonna say? Am I educated enough about the issues? And it's really an informal conversation. They're saying, listen, your program at AMI Kids, you guys need a new pool. Let's get a new pool. Let's make it happen. Let's put it in the budget, and it just happens. And it really just starts with the conversation. You have to have the conversation. And I think a lot of times, especially with youth, we feel like we don't have the capacity to have that conversation. And I think that's one of the main drivers to help get youth involved, to show them that, you know, all the things that you tweet online, because a lot of these youth are genius. I mean, when you talk about metaphors and they really know how to break stuff down. And they're being more confident in doing that. It's just to find a way to channel that through the right avenues and to express those thoughts in the right way. But to be honest, it's been a very amazing experience. I just came from Tallahassee 2 weeks ago. It was super cool. Cindy, I do remember that plane flight we took up there. But it was a great experience, and I encourage everyone to take a trip to your local city commission, your county commission, and the state capitol. You won't regret it.
Darriel, I think you're using some creative ways of getting your message across, correct?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually do relate to Easton in that. I also, when I was advocating to establish an immigrant-friendly ordinance in the city of Hollywood, because there previously hadn't been any, I was also on a team with mostly high schoolers. There was only one person on our team who wasn't a high schooler, and she was more so our mentor than she was a part of the actual advocacy. And so it was interesting to see how this group of high schoolers from like schools across the city were all joining together just to advocate for this piece of legislature. And we also did meet with city commissioners. We met with the vice mayor and the mayor. We had some discussions with the city attorney even. And it was all through Zoom, just like we're doing now. And it was an experience where I was also nervous at first because it's like, oh, you've never even like seen these people, and you know, you think of them as like, oh, these are elected officials with so much power. But something that I realized is that elected officials, they are a lot more responsive than you would think to their constituents. We live in the city of Hollywood and they represent us. So when we go to talk to them as students, they're listening to us as the people who they're supposed to be advocating for in their job. And so like if we're sharing, you know, these are the things that we want to see change in our community, they listen. And it's also informal conversations like this. So there's really not a need to be afraid of, you know, reaching out to them. And we like when we invite new high schoolers to join our campaign, we express it like that. Like, you know, you're just talking to the people who are there to listen to you. Their job is to listen to what you want and enact that in their jobs. So it's a lot less scary than you would think it is. Although I do understand why a lot of teenagers are very apprehensive about it. We don't get a lot of contact with these people and we don't really see their faces or know their names the way that we should. But once you do actually, you know, break that ice and start meeting with them, it becomes a lot easier. And then you realize you're just sharing your thoughts that you already had before. But now because you're sharing it to the people who have the power to make those changes, they're actually going to create a lot more progress in your community than you previously thought was even possible.
So true. You can complain to your neighbor all day long. They don't have the power to make the change. You talk to and express yourself to an elected official. You can't be guaranteed you're going to get your way. It's not always as easy as let me just say it and they fix it, but there's a much better chance of getting something done if you're talking to people who have the power to do something.
Exactly.
We only have about 2 minutes left. Chelsea, any advice to your fellow young people out there?
I would say that once you get your feet wet, it gets easier from there. You just have to take the first step and take a deep breath. And like Easton and Darriel was saying, that these elected officials are more or less like you and me, except they have the power to make change. So once you get over that nerve-wracking fear and like tell yourself that what you say matters, that what you're going to do matters, it gets easier from then on. And you're going to be so grateful that you put yourself out there.
Great advice. Annastacia?
Yeah, no, I'll piggyback off of them. That's absolutely right. There's no need to have any fear. Meeting with someone that can help you resolve the concerns or the issues that you have for your community. So you go ahead and you can email these people, you can contact them. Some of them allow their cell phones to be listed. All you have to do is go to your city's website page and get some of the information from time to time. So just don't be disencouraged to reach out to them, send them emails, be in contact, go to your commission meetings and let them know what you feel needs to be addressed in your community, because they will listen. And if you put enough pressure on it, they will get it addressed.
Great place to end. Just say, remember to be respectful, know what you're talking about, and they will listen to you. Thank you all so much. It really has been a wonderful conversation. If we as adults are committed to creating a better world for our children, it's important that we listen. As we just heard, our youth are brilliant. We just have to help them have the tools so that they feel confident enough to express themselves. Their experience and voice, it needs to be an integral part of the creation of all of our systems. I want to thank Annastacia Robinson, Easton Harrison, Chelsea Lucien, and Darriel Gomez for framing this issue and for sharing their experiences. As I mentioned earlier, this program is part of a series of episodes centered around our Youth Summit series, celebrating 20 years of the CSC as the backbone of our community collaboratives that improve the lives of children and families. You can find information on the Youth Summit series and related community events on our website, cscbroward.org/Youth Summit. I'm Cindy Ehrenberg Seltzer. I've been your host for this special Youth Summit series episode of Future First. For this or any other episode of Future First Focus on Broward's Children, go to our website, cscbroward.org, where you can access our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, and remember to join us next time on Future First, Focus on Broward's Children.